the term porn is like a Marxist term. It's like it completely obscures the reality of what this is. It is a completely demonic, evil images. It is a conspiracy of the fallen angels, the immensity of the evil. And that's part of the spiritual battle, is that men need to create they need to habituate themselves to being revolted. They need to be revolted at the absolute disgusting evil character of what this is.
Yeah, the term pornography, it's so sanitary. You know, it turns it into this it's almost like, oh, it's just a neurosis, or it's just whatever. It's just some sort of psychological thing. But really, it's the worst thing that's ever happened to the human race. It absolutely is the most disgusting habit that's ever befallen mankind. You know, I say this in my book. We think the Romans were bad, and we think the Druids were bad, and they were, obviously, in some ways. But I mean, all of that decadence and revelry that you could ever find in Roman culture, you can carry that around times a zillion in your pocket, and just access it with the swipe of a thumb, sort of thing. So it is a really, really bad thing. Also, there's an aspect. It's so unnatural. I mean, if we obviously every mortal sin will send you to hell, but when you look at Dante's Inferno, and you look at the lowerarchy, let's put it that way, of hell, and he kind of has the mundane sins of the flesh at the highest realm, because it's bad, but it's kind of like it's the I don't know. It's almost like the least intellectual way to sin, if that makes sense.
The most brutish and animalistic.
Yeah. Where at the lowest realm was Judas, because it's explicit hatred of God. But I would say if Dante were to write that book again today, he'd have to find a different rung for pornography, because it's not like a regular sin of lust. It's not. It's because it's also disordered. It's, I mean, as bad as obviously it is, fornication. We all know these things, but they are, if we could be so bold, they're natural in the sense of you don't have to sort of sin against nature in order to commit these sins. It's a sin of lust, but you're still acting like a human with another human,
Yeah, like you're just encountering a female, and you're feeling an attraction, and you're not dealing with that properly. And that's a natural context within which to face a temptation like that. Whereas
exactly
these images is this, it's like a demonic cult. You're entering into a ritual of the demons, basically.
Yeah, it is. It's like, I mean, it's like, when you read about David falling with Bathsheba, you don't say, well, that was really perverted and disordered. It's like, well, that was really bad. You did that, and you gave into lust, or Samson with Delilah or something. With evil images and the whole mechanism of it, I mean, it's really a form of narcissistic homosexual self-worship with evil images and the whole activity that's associated with it, which is a form of self-abuse. You're doing to yourself something. So the direct object of your affection is, at least allegedly, the images on the screen, which often includes men as well. But you are the indirect object of your affection, because you're the recipient of the activity, which is the self-abuse. You're a man, and the indirect object of your affection is another man, which is you. The genesis of this is it is not a heterosexual genesis. It is, and the reason I say self-worship is because essentially, all of your energy of affection and basically the sacrifice of your soul, you're sacrificing your soul and giving it up for yourself in order to pleasure your own self in this non-heterosexual manner. It's an extremely disordered activity. And one of the greatest tactics of the devil today, or even on a natural level, just the disordered psychology that permeates our day, is that this thing is talked about as if it's just another form of lust. That's actually, weirdly, one of the devil's greatest triumphs. our society doesn't care about lust really, so that doesn't really matter to people. But there's this huge elephant in the room of the actual psychological genesis of this activity. There is some psychological research you can carefully read, and it's very scholarly. It's not scandalous. And you'll find, the types of, well, basically topics and preferences and stuff that people sort of descend into over a long period of time. And it becomes more and more disordered. And you realize that this is because ultimately it doesn't actually, I mean, maybe on the surface in the initial stages it does, but in the end, it doesn't really have anything to do with the pure, the sin of lust, again, which is a vice, but we wouldn't call it a vice against nature. But this is a vice against nature. So over time, the habits of an individual become more and more unnatural.
As you just pointed out, this is some form of homosexual self-worship, and I would argue it's also it's like a perverse, weird form of necromancy, because you are not interacting with an actual person. It's one thing if I'm chatting with a real person via modern technology, because there's a real person on the other side of that. But if I'm watching evil images, that person is dead in a sense that they could be actually dead. They could have died and passed on. But I actually am having no real natural interaction with that person. And so there's a dead, the virtual reality of modern technology creates a death, so that the interaction is not natural. It's a totally unnatural, disordered, against nature. So the point is that this thing is bad. More comparable to the revolting sin of Moloch and the demon worship and these rituals that revolt us, compared to David's sin with Bathsheba, as you say.